And let's go straight to tonight's program. And as usual, let's start with this video.
There and Kusasis never existed. We came from, let us put the guns down. Let us use the evidence available to us, orally, documentarily, and otherwise. And let us debate. Let the world know. If they want us to send the case to the court of public opinion, there are so many radio stations, so many television stations. I think the government or some other organizations can foot that bill and let them get their best historians and those who claim to know all the facts. And let us debate so that we can spare the lives of these innocent, young, bubbling men and women that were gunning down and destroying.
Yes, I'm a history student. When you come to history, much of the Kusasis is not known. The histories of the Kusasis are more or less like the conflict, and this current Bawku issue. But as a history student and a future leader to come, we want to know, because this is not only the environment. You might meet somebody somewhere who intends to know the real history of the Kusasis. In the documentaries we have, it is not clear. We can't trace the origin to a place where we can clearly say we came from. We don't know where we came from. As to whether we emanated from the ground, we came from Far East, we came from East Africa, North Africa, we don't know. You have learned more than us, and you have known the history for a long decades. We want to seek your opinion, if you can share that knowledge with us. Thank you.
Encourage you about the history is that we are not the only exception, but that is how it is, and it is because those who wrote the history, I mean the whites and so on, they focus more on the conflict and so on. But it is now time for us to write our own history, okay? And so we always start somewhere, and that's why the course you are doing is very important. And we will write our own history. We will try and trace our roots. History is about facts, so you can't just sit down and write what from your head. We know that there are Kusasis in Burkina Faso, and early writers like Sai and Co. made reference to that. They suggested that we must have migrated from, Bimbo and so on, and so on. But there are things that we need to interrogate further, and so it is not something to regret. It has nothing to do with moving forward, and it is not late. We will do that. We need more people, more of our students to do history and know how to write history, know how to interview people and come up with history, read other historical sources.
But the oral tradition which has been told and retold times and
Don't you love the Kusasis? My dear brothers and sisters, don't you love the Kusasis? They did a good job. They did a good job by coming out with their own history. And in their own history, by providing the solution to the Bawku problem. So we must all be proud of them, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, I was saying, initially, I was saying that tonight is part 3 of what we started two days ago. And tonight, we're going to bring a closer to chapter 1 of this book. Chapter 1 of this book is titled History of Kusas, the Formative Years. And it is or was written by one James Azuma Abbas Abba. He also wrote chapter 2, and I want to believe chapter 3. You know, there are eight individuals who put their heads together to write this book. And James Azuma Abbas Abba, he chose to write or to focus on the history of the Kusasis. And yesterday we learned from this book that the Kusasis have a long history of migration, and they migrated from the Sudanese Empire to Burkina Faso, then to Ghana. And I did tell you that the Sudanese Empire is not present-day Sudan. It's not present-day Sudan. And the term Sudanese Empire is what the European use to describe the various empires that existed between 1400 to the end or late 16th century. Those kingdoms were put together collectively and described as the Sudanese Empire. And if you do remember, I gave you examples. I said the Mali Empire, the Ghana Empire, and the Songhai Empire. These are three major empires in those days that together is described as the Songhai, the Sudanese Empire. I'll give you a map. Sometimes when we visualize things, we get a better understanding of it. So when we talk of the Sudanese Empire, where the Kusasis migrated to Burkina Faso, these three empires were some of the major, or are the major empires of the Sudanese Empire in those days. You have Ghana. Ghana is not present-day Ghana. It's the Ghana Empire, ancient Ghana. Then you have Mali, also not present-day Mali. Then you have the Songhai Empire. Now, the reason why I'm starting tonight's program on the giving highlight about the history of the Kusasi from the Sudanese Empire is that when I read this book, the entire chapter 1, though the Kusasi told us that they migrated from the Sudanese Empire to Burkina Faso, they failed to tell us whether they migrated from the Mali Empire or the Ghana Empire or the Songhai Empire. You see? Now, why that is, or that should be important to history lovers, history students, especially the gentleman who asked about the beginning, the roots, the origin of the Kusasis. It is significant if you have done a thorough research as a historian, you are writing about your people, you should be able to trace from beginning to end and not give a gap. Now, if you know the Kusasis very well, as I do, you will start understanding why they never stated that they came from the Mali Empire to Burkina Faso, or the Ghana Empire to Burkina Faso, or the Songhai Empire to Burkina Faso, but they boxed it together to say the Sudanese Empire. I mean, there's nothing wrong about that. I mean, you may say there's nothing wrong about that, but I'm tough. Those of us who like details, right? Who like to verify facts, who like to verify facts, who like to to understand every little piece of the information, to put one or two things together to make sense of it. For us, I think there's some question mark there. But anyway, let's forget about that. That is to the Kusasis. They should carry their own, paddle their own canoe. Now, this is also something very significant. Now, let's go to the dates. The Ghana Empire started in the 300 and ended in 1200. That is in the 13th century. Then after the Ghana Empire, you have the Mali Empire. The Mali Empire came into existence after the decline of the Ghana Empire. And the Mali Empire started in 1230 and ended in 1600. It ended in the 17th century, right? Now, the Mali Empire was founded by Sundiata Keita. But the Mali Empire became very prominent in world history, if I may put it that way, under their leader, Mansa Musa, the king who worked with huge followers and gold to Mecca. Let me also add that the Ghana Empire was located in part of today's southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. Southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. That's where the ancient Ghana Empire was. Now, after the Mali Empire, the decline of the Mali Empire gave birth to the Songhai Empire. And the Songhai Empire started in 1464 and ended in 1591. That is the 16th century. Now, if you look at the dates that I provided, historians will tell you, or the facts shows that at a point, the Mali Empire and Songhai Empire existed at a point in history. Unlike the Ghana Empire, that totally collapsed and the Mali Empire emerged, right? At a point in history, the Mali Empire and the Songhai Empire existed, my dear brothers and sisters. And gradually, the Mali Empire also gave way. The Songhai Empire. The Songhai Empire controlled much of the trans-Saharan trade in salt, gold, and slaves. Now, I'm giving you a foundation, so just be patient, and then let's go through the history lessons. We've moved from, we've explained or we've understood what is meant as the Sudanese Empire. We've talked about Ghana. After Ghana Empire, we came to Mali Empire and then Songhai Empire. The Songhai Empire ended in the 16th century. And during the Songhai Empire, the empire controlled much of the trans-Saharan trade. The trans-Saharan trade, the products or activities involved were salt, gold, and slaves. Around the same time also, there was also another trade called the trans-Saharan slave trade, which ended in the early 20th century. So that is between 1901 and 1930. Now, let me break it down so that you understand why I started with these facts. Now, let's come back to the Kusasis. I will want to think that the Kusasis migrated from either the Mali and Songhai Empire, if that is what they are telling us is true at all. They migrated from either the Mali or Songhai Empire to Burkina Faso. Now, by going by the fact that during the Songhai Empire, which coexisted at a point with the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire controlled much of the trans-Saharan trade in salt, gold, and slaves. During that same period, there was also another trade called the transatlantic slave trade, which ended in the 20th century. When you listen to Cletus Avoka in one of his narratives, in one of the radio stations about the Kusasis and all that, he mentioned about this, right? Where he was trying to justify their historical facts, saying that, explaining how the Mamprusis came to the Bawku area, and then he was talking about all this, right? But Avoka himself was confused or confusing himself and misleading all of you. You keep on talking about trans-Saharan trade, the transatlantic trade, and it doesn't provide dates. History doesn't like that. History likes date, periods, time. It makes sense when you do that. Now, let's go to the Kusasis. Let's connect the dots. Yesterday, we learned from the Kusasis that they migrated from the Sudanese Empire to present-day Burkina Faso. And when they came to present-day Burkina Faso, by 1870, they migrated to a town called Zabre, and Zabre is a Bisa territory. So they lived with the Bisas there in 1870 or by 1870. By 1870, and now again, in history, when you say something occurred in 1870 and something occurred by 1870, they have different meanings. So the Kusasis use the word, they chose the word by, now, which simply means that that particular event did not occur exactly, it did not occur only in 1870. Probably they started migrating from the Songhai Empire, let's say 1850, right? And by 1870, they were in Zabre. Or we may say that they started migrating from the Songhai Empire in the 1700s, right? The 18th century, the 1700s, and then to Burkina Faso. And by the late 19th century, by the late 19th century, that is in 1870, according to their date, they were in Zabre with the Bisas. They also told us that they migrated from Burkina Faso to present-day Ghana in their present locations in the late 19th century, in 1885. The trans-Saharan trade, as I already indicated, was still in existence around that time. The transatlantic slave trade was also in existence at that time. That is between the 1870 and 1900. The transatlantic slave trade ended in the late 19th century. The late 19th century, between 1870 and 1900. My dear brothers and sisters, now let me go back to Sime so that we'll do some learning. When you study the history of the Kusasis, one school of thought has it that the Bisas were selling Kusasis as slave products. They will catch them and then sell. But Syme disagreed with that. In this book, in fact, Syme told us that the Kusasis actually benefited from the slave trade by buying some of the human beings. The Kusasis were into slave trade practices, right? Now, it is very important, ladies and gentlemen. It is very important. Let's lay the foundation before we close the chapter. Let's lay the foundation before we close the chapter. Now, according to Syme, my dear brothers and sisters, forgive me. I'm just trying to take my time. Okay, so this is what Syme said. Let's listen to Syme, and you will understand why I'm taking my time to read all the. According to Syme, and I quote, at that time, talking about the slave trade era, Syme said that at that time, the great caravans of Hausa Emoshi traders used to make their way down to Salaga, and they were in the habit of staying a month or two in Tinkurgu to break their journey. From there, the horses and fine gowns used to be sent to the Bazarmes leader under the strong escort provided by the Busanga chief of Tinkurugu. Now listen to this. Slaves will be given in exchange and brought back to Tinkurugu. The caravans owing the slaves, use them to proceed down to Bawku, where Kusasis, living under the protection of Mamprusi chiefs, of Mamprusi chief of Bawku, used to come in and buy many of the slaves for cattle and cowries. Now, I don't know whether you are getting my point. During the transatlantic and trans-Saharan trade, at the time that the Kusasis were struggling to migrate from the Sudanese Empire to Burkina Faso, and even in Burkina Faso, when they settled with the Bisses, they migrated to other settlement areas. Around that time, the Mamprusis were in the Bawku traditional area. When you go by Syme's facts, I'm not interested in what the Mamprusis are saying. For me, I'm interested in what Syme is saying and what the Kusasis themselves are saying. Right? How do I know that the Mamprusis were in the Bawku traditional area? Because Syme told us that when the caravan passed, right, from Tinkurugu on its way to Salaga and all that, they will stay in Bawku, and the Kusasis who had migrated. Remember, in 1885, the Kusasis some of them had come to the Bawku area, right? And they were living under the protection, especially those who were in the Bawku traditional area. They were living under the protection of the Bawku chief, my dear brothers and sisters. Syme went on to say that the children of slaves bought by the Kusasis were invariably absorbed into the tribe and known as Kusasis. And by third generation, they would all bear Kusasi facing marks. It is not difficult to obtain corroboration for the above statement. Sam even gave evidence. And he went on to say that at Zabugu, some 4 miles south of Bawku, there was until fairly recently a man called Agbenga Kusasi who bought a Busanga named Akole. This slave had many children by Kusasi women, and many of them are still alive. So a Busanga man had children with Kusasi woman, and those children were given Kusasi facial mark, and then they were observed as Kusasis. And they are those that when you heard me saying the third generation, they are those that we are referring to as the third generation, right? My dear brothers and sisters. Now, let's move straight to the most important part of today's program, talking about this book. Now, in this part, we're going to find out who are the first Kusasis to have migrated from Burkina Faso to Ghana, to present-day Ghana. Yesterday, we discussed their migration. Today, we want to talk about their settlement. We also talk about their clans. We talk about the Tendana, and we talk about chieftaincy, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, according to the Kusasis' own history in this book, and I quote, the Gombo people who lived in Boya, Gombo, and Yirigu in the Tuonde area, and Gombo in Mognori in the Agole area, regard themselves as the people of the earth, Tengbis, and it refers to the first settlers or indigenous people. The Gombo people who lived in Boya and Gombo and Yirigo, that is in the Zebila area. And of course, Gombo in Mognore, that is the Bawku area. These people, they regard themselves as the indigenous people of the Bawku traditional area among the Kusasis. Let's get that clear, among the Kusasis. Now, yesterday we learned that the Kusasis migrated from Burkina Faso to present-day Ghana in the Bawku traditional area by 1885. So even assuming that the Kusasis started migrating little by little around 1701, it still beats my imagination how they would describe themselves as indigenous, because around that time, the Mamprusis were already in the Bawku traditional area. I cannot talk about other tribes or for other tribes, but at least I know about the Mamprusis. Now, if you don't understand the Kusasis, as I keep on saying, as I do, you may not understand why the Kusasis chose to paint the picture that way. Remember, since 1957, they keep on telling Ghanaians, they keep on telling the world that they are the indigenous people. They are the indigenous people of the Bawku traditional area. They are the Tendanes. They are the what and what and what and what. But they never told Ghanaians when they came to the Bawku traditional area. They never even want to tell Ghanaians that they migrated somewhere to be where they are until this book came. So now we are interrogating their history. and interrogating their history, you need to take the time they told us that they were in the Bawku traditional area as one fact, and their claim that they are the indigenous people. You need to take these two facts to reconcile them. And it cannot be reconciled because by 1885, Mamprusis and other tribes were already in the Bawku traditional area. So there's no way that the Kusasis can be fit to be described as indigenous people in Ghana. Now, the Kusasis went on in this book to give an example of one of their legends. Now, let's listen to this. They say that while hunting, the ancestors of the Boya people. Now, the Boya people belong to what the Kusasis call the Bim clan. The ancestors of the Boya people, that's the Bim clan, discovered the Gombo people in a nearby forest. I'm quoting them, and wanted to know where they came from. So, the ancestors of the Boya people. Let me pause and then repeat something so that we'll follow the story. According to the Kusasis, the Gombo people who lived in Boya, Gombo, and Yirigu in the Tuonde area, and the Gombo Mognore, the Bawku area, they regard themselves as the Tengbis, the first settlers or indigenous people in the Bawku traditional area. And I always want to clarify, among the Kusasis. And they are saying that those who settled in Boya, the Gombo people who settled in Boya, legend has it that one day they were hunting. Their ancestors were hunting. And during their hunting, they got to a forest and discovered the Gombo people. The Gombo people. And when they discovered the Gombo people, so the Boya people discovered the Gombo people. And when they discovered the Gombo people, they asked the Gombo people, or they wanted to know from the Gombo people where they came from, because they didn't know that the Gombo people came from Burkina Faso, they came from Nigeria, they came from Togo. They didn't know. The Kusasis also didn't tell us, right? But they only said the Gombo people were hunting. They discovered the Boya people were hunting. They discovered the Gombo people and wanted to find out from the Gombo people where they came from. And what did the Gombo people say? The Gombo people said they came from the earth. They came from the earth. Hence, Tengbis. So Tengbis became associated with the Gombo people. That is how they became indigenous people. Right? Oh, Bakutoma, where did you come from? Then Bakutoma said, oh, I came from the earth, which means Tengbis, people of the earth or earth people. And that then became associated with the Gombo people as the indigenous people. Now, if you want to analyze this, it will tell you that the mere fact that somebody asks you, where did you come from? And you said you didn't tell that person that you came from Burkina Faso, or you came from Nigeria, or you came from Mali, or you came from Ivory Coast, but told this person that you came from the earth. doesn't necessarily make you an indigenous person. Let's understand the Kusasis. It simply means that they didn't know where they came from. If not, ask me, which human beings didn't come from the earth? Which human being didn't come from the earth? Nobody came from heaven. We were all given birth on earth. So we all came from the earth. So if the Boya people asked the Gombo people where you came from, and the Gombo people said we came from the earth, and by that you describe them as the literal meaning is the earth people or people of the earth, and therefore associated that with the Gombo people, hence describing them as indigenous people is problematic. You see, this is the beginning of the confusion the Kusasi created. Up to date. Let's go on. In this book, the Kusasis told us that every single Kusasis, all the clans, including the Boya people who discovered the Gombo people, then embraced the term Tingbis. Thus, they all became known as indigenous people. So, if this is the history of how the Kusasis are claiming indigeneity in the Bawku traditional area. This is their history. This is how they became indigenous people. And by the date they provided, we can say that they became indigenous people in 1885 among themselves. Among themselves. But not among all the ethnic tribes that are existing in Bawku today. I will repeat, among the Kusasis. So a Kusasi can be an indigenous person among the Kusasi people, but not an indigenous person in the Bawku traditional area. So let's make that clear. Now, that is the history of the Kusasis settlement from Burkina Faso to present-day Ghana, the Bawku traditional era. That is their beginning. The Kusasis will tell you in this book that clanship is very important in understanding the Kusasis. So that is what we're going to talk about now, clanship. I was trying to show you some. Let's get this picture. This. Now, when you look at where I circle with the red ink and I wrote there number 1, that is Burkina Faso, Zouaga, Yuga, and Bingo. This is where the Kusasis came from to settle in the Zebila area and the Bawku area. When the Kusasis migrated from Zabre, the Bisa territory, they came to settle in Zouaga, Yuga, and Bingo. And in the Burkina Faso country, these 3 places arguably are known as original Kusasi settlements in Burkina Faso. And from there, they found their way into the Bawku traditional area by 1885, my dear brothers and sisters. I also need to show you this graph. This graph is very important in understanding tonight's program. I titled it Mamprusis versus Kusasis Settlement and Political Timeline. So when you go by the history of the Kusasis, they said by 1870 they were in Burkina Faso, still struggling to find settlement areas there. Finally, they were able to settle in 3 other places. And then around the 1800s, in 1885, they came to the Bawku traditional area. Then when you then go to the 1900s, that is when the British came to colonize the northern territories and then impose their indirect rule, recognizing Mamprusis as chiefs in Bawku because the Mamprusis were already chiefs in Bawku. So the British did not come to make Mamprusis chief. They came and made the Mamprusis there as chief, so they recognized them. Then in the 1950s, precisely beginning in 1957 to the 1960s, there was a political change that recognized the Kusasis as chief, that is Nkrumah days. Now, when you look at this map, the lights, should I say blue, that is for the Mamprusis. The Mamprusis will tell you that their first chief in the Bawku traditional area was in 1721. So when you start from all 1721 all the way to 1885, the Kusasis were not in the Bawku traditional area. I mean, in 1850, the Kusasis were not in the Bawku traditional area until 1885. So there's the possibility that the Kusasis started migrating in bits from 1850 to the Bawku traditional era, and by 1885, they were all settled in the Bawku traditional area, my dear brothers and sisters. So that is also important to share. Now let's go to the clan. Let's go to the clan system. Let's go to the clan system. And then before I go to the clan system, another important thing that I need to highlight. You know, when the Kusasi told us in this book that they migrated from the Sudanese Empire to Burkina Faso, they never told us who led them, which Kusasi ancestor led them to Burkina Faso. When they came to Burkina Faso to settle with the Bises in Zabre, they never told us, they never mentioned even one person as their ancestor. When they moved from Zabre to other settlement in Zo, Bingu, Yuga, and Zwaga, in this book, at least in chapter 1, they still didn't tell us, they didn't mention one single person who is their ancestor. Now, when you come to the point where they said the Gombo people in Boya, Gombo, Yirugu, both in the Bawku traditional, the Bawku area and the Kusasi area, consider themselves as the indigenous people. This book never told us which individual Kusasi or group of Kusasis. When I say group of Kusasis, I mean names, 1 or 2 persons or more, who they will say are our leaders. You see, so the Kusasi history, they still have more work to do. And I think in this book, somewhere in this book, they said they were working on their second book. So let's hope that the second book will come. The second book will come and then clarify some of these things for us, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, clans. According to the Kusasis in this book, clans and lineage are groups that traces their ties to a common ancestor. The Kusasis are very funny. So you listen to this. They said clans and lineages are groups that traces their ties to a common ancestor, whether real or imaginary. Now you know this, Kusasis, you know this, that clans and lineages are groups that traces their ties to a common ancestor, whether real or imaginary. That is, whether real or fictitious or fiction. Yet, you haven't been able to tell us whether real or imaginary ancestor of the Kusasis since your long migration from the Sudanese Empire to Burkina Faso and to Bawku. Kusasis, why? Anyway, so that is what the Kusasis told us. I quoted them that clans and lineages are groups that trace their ties to a common ancestor, real or imaginary. And then in this book, they also told us that in the Bawku traditional area, there are over 50 clans, 50 clans. And in the Zebila area, that's the Tuonde, they are about 10. So in the Tuonde area, they have less clans than the Bawku area. The Bawku area, they have more than 50. In the Tuonde area, they have about 10. Again, the Kusasis failed in chapter 1. I haven't yet gone to chapter 2 to decode it, but in chapter 1, the Kusasis fails to mention one single individual, the name of one single clan head out of the 50, the over 50 clans in the Bawku traditional area. They could not mention the name of one individual as the clan head of the Kusasis at the time that they came to the Bawku traditional area. They could not also mention one person's name as the clan head among the 10 clans in the Zebila area. Notwithstanding the fact that in this book, they told us that the two dominant clans out of the over 50 clans in the Bawku area, and then the 10 clans in the Zebila area. Now, even if you limit Bawku area to 50 and the Zebila area to 10, that is 60 clans. They said that out of the 60 clans, 2 are very dominant, and that is the Zo clan and the Bim clan. Yet again, they failed to tell us who was the clan head of the Zo clan in the beginning. That is when they migrated from Burkina to Ghana. They also could not tell us who was the clan head, the Bim clan head, who migrated from Burkina to the Bawku area. According to the Kusasis, these two dominant clans, the Zo clan and the Bim clan, constitute the ruling class. These two clans constitute the ruling class in the Zebila area. However, in the Bawku area, it is not necessarily so. So in the Bawku area, it means that if you do your investigation and you realize that Abogorago Azoka Ninchema is neither from the Zo clan or the Bim clan, is good. That is what they are telling us in essence. Listen to them. Because I said they come, sometimes they try to be smart. They said that among the over 50 clans in the Bawku area and the about 10 clans in the Zebila area, 2 dominant clans existed. The Zo clan and the Bim clan. Now, when you go to the Zebila area, the Zo clan and the Bim clan, these 2 clans are the ruling class. So it means that a younger man cannot come to the Zebila area and say he's a Kusasi chief. A Busanga man cannot come to the Zebila area and say he's a Kusasi chief. A Mamprusi man cannot come to the the Zebila area and say he's a Kusasi chief. However, among the Kusasis, when you go to the Bawku area, it is not only the Zo clan or the Bim clan that is the ruling class. Now, as we go on, we will find out whether Abogrago Azoka, the first Kusasi chief, who called himself a Tendana, whether he's from the Zo clan or the Bim clan, or he belonged to a different clan, and what is the name of that clan. We will interrogate all this, my dear brothers and sisters. But before I continue, let me again share this. Let's remind each other about what the Kusasis said about themselves, besides, even before this book came into existence. Let's listen to this.
Saat, Ndau suka sa cultus avoka. Yes. Ya ma ya man bati isi minin municipality lakengane babone sabil ndi yam law mbel wade kmenam igin ni duma na nama ndi lim yam no repia ba kampanga ti isi mun Bawku municipality la as a capital in Kusaka kengen sabil kok sabil an pure 100% Kusas. Oh yes.
So the Kusasis themselves know that when you come to the Bawku traditional area, the Bawku area and the Zebila area, and you want to talk about the Kusasis, you can only find pure Kusasis in the Zebila area. And again, it is in this book, Sime. So this gentleman was saying that, hey, Kusasis, all the fighting that you are doing, listen, let's allow peace to prevail. Let's solve this problem. Right? So let's move the capital from Bawku to Zebila. Our paramount chief is in Bawku. The district assembly and whatever is in Bawku. Let's move the capital there to Zebila and allow the Mamprusis to be there disturbing themselves. Is this a difficult thing to do? Well, maybe it's difficult because if Abogrago Azoka doesn't belong to the Zur clan or the Bim clan, it means that he cannot be a chief of Kusasis and sit in Zebila area, the Twende area. It's as simple as that. Now, let's go on. The Kusasis went on to tell us that in their own history, they went on to tell us that the Zu clans migrated from Manga in Burkina Faso. Right? Now, how about in the Bawku traditional area? When they left Manga to the Bawku traditional area, where did they settle? According to the Kusasis in their history book, the Zoo clan settled in Widinaba, Kusanaba, Binduri, Zabgu, and Zosi. The Zoo clan settled in Widinaba, Kusanaba, Binduri, Zabgu, and Zosi when they moved from Burkina Faso. The Bim clan also settled in Binaba, Boya, Bogzoa, and Pusiga. And they trace their roots to Bingo. So the Bim clan traced their roots to Bingo, my dear brothers and sisters. So that is about Kusasis clan. But let me highlight this again. Then gradually we'll move to the Tendanship. According to the Kusasis, the Zoo clan is the first to have migrated to from Burkina Faso, followed by the Bim clan. So again, between the two clans, if you want to know which of them first settled in Bawku, first stepped foot in Bawku, it is the Zoo clan. And the Zoo clan is from the Zoo settlement in Burkina Faso. When the Kusasis left Zabre, the Bisa area, and went to settle in another town called Zoo, probably that group migrated to Bingu. And then from there, one of them, with his followers, came to the Bawku traditional area. And they were the first Kusasis to settle in the Bawku traditional area, that particular clan. Now, I don't know whether Abuguragwa Zoka Ninchema belongs to that clan or not. The second clan, among the over 50 clans in the Bawku area, and then about 10 clans in the Zebila area, the second clan to have set foot in present-day Ghana from Burkina Faso is the Bim clans, the Bim clan. Again, I don't know whether Abuguragwa Zoka Ninchema came from that clan. And according to the Kusasis, the Bim and Zoo clans came to Bawku many years before European colonization. Again, let's go to some map and then look at the facts. All right. Now, when you look at this map, that is a present-day Ghana map. To the north up is the Upper Volta, present-day Burkina Faso. When you come to south, you have I can see. Okay. Then when you go to east, you have Togo, and then west you have Ivory Coast. Right now, many different Europeans, came to Ghana and attempted to colonize Ghana and finally colonized Ghana. Now, the Portuguese were the first, and history tells us that they were in Ghana in 1471 to 1642. Of course, when you go by the Kusasis' own history, at the time that the Portuguese came to Ghana, the Kusasis probably were in either under the Mali Empire or the Songhai Empire, or even the Ghana Empire. The Ghana Empire wasn't in existence around that time. So it could either be the Mali Empire or the Songhai Empire. At that time, they had not even come to Burkina Faso. At the time the Portuguese came to the Gold Coast, the Kusasis were nowhere near Burkina Faso. Then after the Portuguese, the Dutch took over 1642 to 1871. The Kusasis at this time were in Burkina Faso because they were in Burkina Faso by 1870. by 1870. So the Kusasis were in Burkina Faso. However, they were nowhere near the Gold Coast. They were nowhere near the Gold Coast. Then after the Dutch, the Danish took over. The Danish were in Ghana from 1750 to 1850. 100 good years, 1 century. Around that time, the Kusasis were still in present-day Burkina Faso. They were nowhere near Ghana, present-day Ghana. Then after the Danish, the British took over. The British took over in 1821 until 1957, when Ghana became an independent nation. An independent nation. Ghana became Gold Coast colony officially in 1874. 1874. Again, as at the time Ghana, the Gold Coast became a British colony officially in 1874. The Kusasis were nowhere near in the Gold Coast. They were far away. They only came to the Gold Coast by 1885. You see, that is why I keep on saying that history is about time, it's about periods, it's about, so if you don't put the dates, history doesn't look sweet, it doesn't look real, it doesn't, you don't get a clearer picture, my dear brothers and sisters. So when you read in this book, and the Kusasis say that the Zok and the Bim clans migrated from Burkina Faso to settle in present-day Ghana many years before European colonization. When you just read something like that, your mind will be thinking something different, right? You may think that the Kusasis were in the Gold Coast during the time the Portuguese were in. You may think the Kusasis were in the Gold Coast during the time the Dutch were in. You may think the Kusasis were in Gold Coast during the time, the Danish were in. You may even think the Kusasis were in the Gold Coast before the British. I mean, before the Gold Coast became a colony. You may even think the Kusasis were in the Gold Coast before the Gold Coast became a colony. But that is not a fact. You see, so you need in history, you need dates to make sense of things like this. My dear brothers and sisters, let me hurry up. Because I need to go to the airport. But anyway, so let's continue. Service to Mamprugu, let's continue. So when I did my analysis, I said that when the Kusasis say they migrated from Burkina Faso to present-day Gold Coast many years before the arrival before British European colonization. Again, listen, let me explain something. History is sweet. Let me explain something. Let's take whatever the Kusasis tell us serious and interrogate it and analyze it. So let me take the sentence. I'm gonna paraphrase and then quote here. So let me paraphrase. The Kusasis said the two dominant Zo clans that migrated to the Bawku area first, that is to Gold Coast first, are the Zo clan and then the Bim clan. And the Kusasis told us in their history book that these two clans came to migrated from Burkina Faso to the Gold Coast many years before European colonization. Now, underline the word European colonization. Again, this is vague. They are generalizing it. Now, when you look at the history of Europeans' existence in present-day Ghana, then Gold Coast, you see history will tell you that it started with the Portuguese, then to the Dutch, then to the Danish, then to the British. Now, all of these are Europeans. None of them is an African. They're all Europeans. So if you read in this book, I don't know what I'm making sense. If you read in this book, and then the Kusasis tells you that those two clans migrated from Burkina Faso to Ghana many years before colonization, European colonization. What they are trying to mislead you is that they were in the Gold Coast, right? Present-day Ghana before the Portuguese, before the Dutch, before the Danish. And since they want to mislead you, you may even think before the British. But that is not true. At least from the facts that the dates that I've shared and from the date that they have provided. So history also tells you that if you want to decode what the Kusasis said, now let me decode it. When they said that they came to the present-day Ghana many years before European colonization, when you decode it by the dates that I provided, you come to the conclusion that they are saying that they are just saying that they were in present-day Gold Coast before the British colonized the northern territories. Get it? Get the difference. When you look at the history of Ghana, right? When the British came, they didn't colonize the entire country at once. They started with the coastal area, then the Ashanti colony. The coastal area was called the Gold Coast colony. It was called the Gold Coast colony. Then from there, they came to the Ashanti colony. Then completely the Northern Territory. They then came to colonize the Northern Territory. And that then gave them a total, complete colonization of the entire present-day Ghana. And the name Gold Coast took over. History will tell you that the British were in the Northern Territory beginning in 1896. But officially colonized the territory in 1901. In 1890, beginning in 1896, it was a protectorate. They had not formally or officially colonized the Northern Territories. In 1896, beginning 1890s, that was where they were signing treaties with chiefs. Then by 1901, officially 1901, the Northern Territories was now under British colony. And the Kusasis were in the Bawku area, were in Gold Coast by 1885. So if the Kusasis were in Gold Coast by 1885, yes, they were there before the British came to the Northern Territory, but not before the British arrived in the Gold Coast. So you see the difference. So you need to decode this. You need to decode this. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I have a question for the Kusasis. I've already asked it, but let me make it formal. Who is the common ancestor of the Zo clan and or the Beam clan? Maybe in their next book, they will provide that. My second question is, from the Kusasis' own history, we know that indigenous people or first settlers among the Kusasis are known as Tingbis. That is the Gumbo people who said that they came from the earth, or they came here, right? Referring to the earth. So, and by that they are known as they are associated to as Tingbis, which also means that first settlers. And first settlers here also means the indigenous people. So the question is, from the Kusasi history, we know that the indigenous people or first settlers known as Tingimbis own the land they occupy. They own the land they occupy. Now, who is the Tindan among the Kusasi people? We know the Tingimbis, the Tingbis, the Earth people, right? Who is Tindan? Is Tindan a landowner or a priest? Now, my dear brothers and sisters, this shift us to the Tindan section. The Tindan section. According to the Kusasis, Tindan is a leadership structure. Listen to the Kusasis. Let me see if I can just read it verbatim from the book, so that okay. So let me read it from the book. So that I'm going to read it from book. Okay. That is page 7. This is how it started. It said, in line with this reverence for nature among the Kosas, they develop a leadership structure where authority over the land rests with Tindan, into brackets, landowner stroke earth priest, and not the Naba chief. Again, if you don't interrogate what the Kusasis tell you, you may just be reading. So, see, this is it. Let's understand this. This book is meant for the Kusasis. And any Kusasi who take this book to read, that person will not interrogate it the way I am interrogating it. So that person will still be misled by this book. And that is the danger in this. And the Kusasi deliberately presented their history the way they presented some of their facts, by telling us that Tindanship is a leadership structure. Now they will expose themselves. Let's continue. So, according to the Kusasi, Tindan is a leadership structure they develop, a leadership system they develop. Now, why the Kusasi are saying so in this book is because, you know, the Mompusis talk about chiefs, the Dagomba talks about chief, the Moshi talks about chief and all that, right? And we say we don't know the Kusasis with chieftaincy, right? So the Kusasis don't have leadership. So I tell you, no. The Tindana that we are talking about is a leadership structure that we develop, we the Kusasi develop. So the Tindana is our leader. And he is given the authority over the land. Over the land. And of course, what? over the land. And of course, the shrines, they will tell you in this book. Now let me quote one part that they said. They said, this resulted in the misconception that the Kusasis were a society without centralized government or political leader, but only spiritual head. So what the Kusasis are saying is that many people have told us that, I've told the Kusasis that they don't have leaders, or they didn't have leadership because they didn't have chiefs. And according to the Kusasis, that is a misconception. That is a lie about their history. That is a distortion about their history. Because by their leadership system, the Tendan is their leader. So you cannot say the Kusasi didn't have a leader. Right? And the argument that a centralized governance, as the Mamputis, the Dagombes, and other ethnic groups that has chiefs practice, according to Kusasi, you cannot say that they didn't also have centralized government. They had centralized government under their Tendan system. Kusasis. Let me acknowledge Asimiga Simon. He said, a Fulani man teaching history. Well, if God bless a Fulani man with historical knowledge and facts to be a history teacher, it's just a blessing. How many Kusasis are blessed with this knowledge of the Fulani man? Anyway, let me since I'm acknowledging Asimiga Simon, let me spice up the program with something small from Kusasi. Let's listen to this.
Because of the disgrace, we are disgracing ourselves. What is in chieftaincy? It is not well for anybody to die. Yes.
Ruwa ya haumu, wuta ya chimu, munchiro ruwa ya haumu, munkunna wuta ya chimu.
Asimiga Simon, you are Tendanes. You say you want to be chiefs. Now, kunchira ruwa ya chiku. Anyway, you are welcome, Simon, my good brother. Keep on taking notes of the history lesson. I doubt you have read this book. I doubt it. But I'm happy that I'm teaching you your history book before you get the opportunity to read it, so that when you read it, your mind will open. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, according to the Kusasis, the misconception, the distortion of their history by colonialists, by Mamprusis, by other people, that they didn't have a centralized system of governance because they didn't have a chief at Tindana, is a lie. Now, in other ways, let me tell you who the Kusasis exposed in this book. They exposed Cletus Avoka. Asimiga Simon, in this your history book, that is, if you yourself, you are not a third generation, assuming that you are a pure Kusasi. I'm a Fulani, a pure Fulani, assuming that you are a pure Kusasi. In this your book, you are saying that it is not true that you don't practice centralized governance. because you didn't have a chief. You practice centralized government under the Tindanship system. That's what you said in this book. But when you also listen to Cletus Avoka, on many occasions, Cletus Avoka told us that the Kusasis are an acephalous group. They are an acephalous group, meaning they didn't practice centralized system of governance. Was Avoka aware about the Tindanship system that you developed, or he wasn't aware? I'll leave that to you and Avoka to settle that. So according to the Kusasis, the word Tindan, now see, this is where they started corrupting the word. You see, in this book, when they talk about where the Tindan came, they put it into brackets, landowner and landowner or earth priest. But in another part, they explicitly dropped they dropped the earth priest and explicitly stated that Tindan, the word Tindan connotes landowner. Again, that is where the propaganda begins. That is how they confused people to lay claim to the Bawku land. Or we are the Tindana. We are the Tindanas. Tindana mean land owner. Tindana mean land owner. How about the Tingbis? How about the Tingbis? Of course, it makes sense to argue that a Tingbi may not be a Tindan, but a Tindan can be a Tingbi. Right? I'm trying to help the Kusasis here. A Tingbi may not be a Tindan, but a Tindan can be a Tingbi. In other words, Tingbi is the whole set. Tindan is a subset. So ten people. Let me say let me use the word the Zo clan or the Gombo people who said they came from Earth, Tingbis. Not all of them may be Tindans. In other words, not all of them may be sacrificing or taking care of the gods, the shrines, right? Now, when you understand it that way, a Tingbi can be a Tindan. No, a Tindan can be a Tingbi, but a Tingbi may not necessarily be a Tindan. When you understand it that way, you get a clearer understanding of the word Tindan, that it strictly means, or it's accurately or properly means earth priest and not landowner. But of course, politically, you chose to say landowner. Again, that is one of the confusing signs created. And because it suits the Kusasis, they took it. Now, the Kusasis also said, I'm going to end tonight's program here. Then tomorrow we continue with chieftaincy. Chieftaincy, another interesting topic. Chieftaincy, because I need to go to the airport, my dear brothers and sisters. Under Tindanship, the Kusasis also said Tingbana, that is deities, exists all over the Bawku area. And they went on to say, including Banwa in Pusuga. Now, again, let me expose the Kusasis here also. And by asking this question, why didn't the Kusasi explicitly state that the word Tindan connotes or also connotes earth priest, but limited it to landowner? This is something you need to start thinking about. Number 2, which Kusasi Tendant apportioned land for Mamprusis to settle in the Bawku traditional area, assuming without admitting that the Kusasis were first in the Bawku traditional area before the Mamprusis. And third, but not the least, among all the Kusasis Tengmana, assuming that all the Tengmanas in the Bawku traditional area belongs to the Kusasis, among all of them, my question is, which of them is older than the Gbanwa shrine in Pusga? And if you Kusasis don't know, Gbanwa is not a Kosa. It's not a Kusasi name. It is a Mampruli word. Gbanwa. The Mampruli called Nagbewa in Mampruli Gbanwa. The Dagombes called him Bewa. So when we all keep on saying Bewa, 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 that is in Dagbani. In Mampruli, it is Gbanwa. And Kusasis, when you keep on swearing that Tonsok Negbanwa, these are names or ancestors of Mamprusis. Gbanwa is Nagbewa. Tonsok is one of the sons of Nagbewa who the Mamprusi traces their roots to. My dear brothers and sisters, we've done 1 hour, 45 minutes. Let me end tonight's program here. And tomorrow we will continue. Tomorrow our topic is chieftaincy. Chieftaincy among the Kusasi people. The history of chieftaincy. When the chieftaincy start among the Kusasi people in Burkina Faso, in Ghana, we shall know all this. Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you so very much for your patience. And I truly appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.